My name is Lin Shaye. I am very happily an actress.
Wonderful. So congrats on your new role in Frank and Penelope. Could you do me a favor and tell us what is this movie about?
It's a road trip movie,
Mhm.
and has sort of resonance of James Dean and Marilyn a little bit. It's a story of a young woman who is sort of being controlled. Sean Patrick Flannery plays
Mhm.
a nasty guy. He's got her sort of wrangled in. She's very sexy and very young and very nubile, and he kind of uses that to his advantage as a businessman.
Mhm.
And up comes our hero and decides to engage her. And he actually, there's a fight where he kind of wins the fight and pulls her out of the house. And the rest is a journey they take, and they end up in a section of the world that has been affected by mercury and bad drugs that has created sort of a species all unto itself. I mean, they're all human, they're all
Yes.
in human form, we should say, but they have very, very bad predilections of bad things. They do very bad things,
Yes, they do.
and they end up in this section of their town, and there's a table they call the table of truth. Our heroine and hero get sort of pulled into this town, and chaos ensues. That's all I can really say.
Yes, definitely. There are some pretty horrific parts of this film that I
Have you
think our
seen? Did
audience
you
will
did you see
love.
the whole film?
I
Oh,
did
great.
get to
Okay.
see it.
So if
Yeah.
you can embellish even better than me on the storyline, please do.
I think you did great. And as you were saying, it's a road trip movie. There are really scary segments, but it has a romance at its core.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering, why do you think audiences are so drawn to stories about romances?
Because it's so lacking in our world right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's, I mean, just the mystery of romance is sort of dead, it feels. I mean, listen, we've been through also a very horrific couple of years that is unprecedented.
Yeah.
And people have lost their senses of self, I think, during this period also. And I think you need a strong sense of self to have romance.
Mhm.
It takes two to tango, as they say. And I think people have let their physical self go. Even I, like today, I thought, I don't know. It's like, is the hair good? What do I have on too much makeup? I mean, I've lost perspective on my own self-image almost. And I think romance is sort of partly dependent, not that that's an artificial thing, but dependent on a strong sense of self. And I think that we've lost that over right now in particular. So I think even more than usual, people are going to be drawn to films where people have that strong presence of self and where they can identify themselves and then have a real relationship. And these two do. I mean, I think they really did a beautiful job. And this woman that I play, Ophelia, her sense of self is way off. That's all I can say. And that had nothing to do with the pandemic. That just had to do with how she lived her life, I think. But anyhow, romance is at the core, I think, of partial part of our joy. As people,
Yes,
there's romance, the fantasy of loving someone.
it's so important. Do you have any favorite romances from cinema history? Is there anything that comes to mind?
African Queen.
Okay. I don't know it so well. Can you fill me in?
Oh, African Queen is Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn, and it's not your typical romance either. He's this craggy old. I mean, you have to see it. It's truly one of the great classics, and they were a great pair. I mean, they were a great, and also Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart. The old fashioned romances really, in my mind, are the most, they're the most romantic. That's all I
Yeah.
can say. We don't really, romance has gotten disheveled. It's like we don't, when you look at movies from before, from a fairly long time ago. I mean, everyone dressed up. If you look at, everyone's dressed up. That's one thing I always notice. The men are, Cary Grant's always in a great suit,
Mhm.
or a great sport shirt if he's being casual. and the women are all coiffed and, pulled in, and their clothes are gorgeous.
Mhm.
Edith Head was the big designer of many of these beautiful films, and it's a whole different aura, a fantasy, really. And especially in films, I think we look for that. We look for role models that resurrect our own sense of romance and style.
Yeah,
And so I mean, there's so many. I mean, I would say the era of romance has sort of disappeared now, with violence and guns and war, and war and hatred and black versus white and white versus whatever. I mean, we're all there's a real sadly to say, I think a real emphasis on that right now in particular.
I agree, which is why
And
this movie is so refreshing.
but this also incorporates a little bit of the other too, which is
That's
kind of
true.
great. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a real horror film, and yet it, like you say, at the core of it is this sort of unpredictable romance. Well,
Yeah.
it becomes predictable, but they're two unlikely people to fall in love.
I find there's a real Americana aesthetic to this movie with the road trip. And I'm wondering, if you could take an American road trip tomorrow, where would you go?
Well, I actually had an experience when with my son when he was around 12 and his dad, and we took a road trip. My husband at the time bought a 1960 black Cadillac convertible
Wow.
for $16,000. We
Hmm.
scrambled it up to get the
Wow.
cash.
Mhm.
Basically, the car was sold to us. Had never been in any kind of an accident. It was in really perfect, pristine shape, but it was still from 1960. And
Wow.
this trip was probably 20 years ago now. So, and we drove a road trip. We took with the top down from the car was delivered in New Jersey. So
Okay.
we met in New Jersey. We drove from New Jersey all through Route 66, all the way down to New Orleans.
Wow.
And I mean, it was spectacular. I encourage everybody to take road trips because that's how you see this country. I never
Mhm.
knew what America looked like,
Mhm.
because you look at it from an airplane or from a movie or from a book, but you pass through these small towns and you meet wonderful people. I mean, we met the craziest, most wonderful people. I remember on 4th of July, we were in some high school. I can't remember exactly where we were at, somewhere in the South. And we were like at a high school picnic. We got invited, and you don't really know what America's made of until you are on the ground. You have hands on the ground, going from state to state and city to city. We had no plan. We didn't know where we were going to sleep each night. We didn't know how far we had to drive, where we were going to be. Our car broke down in Minnesota, I remember, and we went
Mhm.
to some little league baseball games, and we spent the day. And there was a regatta of some kind of boat, the weird thing where all these kids made their own boats.
Okay.
So these giant, sort of figureheads at the head of each boat, and you really got a sense of the creativity of our country too. We live in even though we have all this technology, we live in such a small world. We live in our chair, with the thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I hate it, I have to say. I think it's damaged all of us. We've all become
Robots.
kind of, I mean,
Yeah.
even I go, put this thing down, just get rid of it, put it down. If you can take a road trip, and gas right now, it makes it a little less attractive, most likely, but it's really worth something to do. Make no plan, just go and see and investigate.
This is good advice. So it goes without saying, you are a horror icon. What is it like engaging with the horror community that love you so much? Is it all wonderful, or is it strange, or what is it like from your perspective?
From my perspective, it's all been wonderful. I've had no creepy things happen, which I suppose it can.
Mm-hmm.
I like to feel I generate a positivity in my presence and in the films I do, that sort of awakens that in people who may not be awake to that fully, you know,
Yeah.
that because horror in particular really does, I mean, there's probably a really dark side of the community that is, you know, I'm not a blood and guts person either, although I'm fine with it if it serves the story and serves the film. But
Mhm.
I'm not I can be creepy, believe me.
I know.
I can be creepier than even I like to admit. But in terms of the fan base, everybody has always been very generous and very loving. And one of my favorite moments ever was I was at Ralph's supermarket in the produce section, and I hear from across the store, "Elise, it's Elise!" And I see
Yeah.
literally like about 10 little girls from between the ages of 9 and 14
Oh,
converged. I mean, they came racing through the store. It was a little odd, but everybody kind of was, you know, just what's going on. And they literally surrounded me like a bunch of little puppies, you know, and they were hugging me and we love you so much. We love you so much. And I was so shocked. I mean, because, you know, here this is a horror film, you know, and yet it elicited all this affection from these little girls. And I thought that's really great. If I can combine what I do with creating that kind of excitement and joy in a young population, that's a treasure.
amazing
So,
for sure. And
so
those movies really cast a spell on people. Fans love them so much. And you don't have to say if you can't, of course, but I'm wondering, have you heard anything about the upcoming fifth film? Is there anything you can tell us?
there's nothing I can tell you.
Okay, I had to try.
There's it will, you know, it will be happening. That's all I can say. Patrick
Hey,
Wilson will be directing it.
yes.
And it's basically, he's also starring in it. And I adore Patrick. I think he's really, really talented and one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And I hope good things for everybody and all of us. But
Me
that's all
too.
I can say.
That's perfect. With him directing and also Sean Patrick Flannery directing his first film, is that something you ever think about as an actor? Is that something you would like to do?
No.
Oh, why?
I don't know enough. I don't know enough about camera. I don't know enough about, it's really, really a hard job
Yeah.
because you are the go-to. Everybody that's got a problem comes to you with everything. And I don't feel like I know enough. And I feel like my skill is really as an actress. I feel that's where I can express the best parts of myself. I've been producing a little bit. Like what is happening is that people are bringing me scripts and I read them and I go, can I
Oh,
say bad words? Am I allowed to say bad words in this
yes.
podcast? And I go, well, that's shitty, you know. I go, but if they only put this and that, and I'm only talking to myself, and I, you know, if you move that around and you got rid of that and you make your story, so suddenly I realize I'm sort of a dramaturge a little bit. I sort of can
Yeah.
look at a story and see what's missing and what's not working, and so I have found myself giving notes, and people are hungry for that. There's a
Yes.
script now someone just gave me, and I'm disappointed in what I read because the idea of it seems so strong. And I have no plans to really do too much, but immediately it's like, well, the director would love to have your notes and they'd love to. So I think, well, how much I have the time. So sure, I'll go in and see if I can come up with some thoughts. And then you usually end up with a producer or associate producer credit of some kind.
Hmm.
Um, when I did a little movie called Room for Rent,
Hmm.
which is great. And I'm so proud of that film. And that film was sort of my first producing. I got very involved in story. We changed so many things about the script. And I think made it very strong. What I recognize is I'm a really good storyteller. And I know when feels something's not right here or something. I have good instincts
Yeah.
reading material. I'm not always right. I mean, God knows, but I feel like usually even if my idea is off, it will stimulate another idea from the writer or the director. Um, I did a series this past fall in Canada that we don't have a title for yet. New Regency is the studio, and I'm very excited about it. It's a character like I've never played before. Um, and it was under a lot of tight rein because we had a very tight schedule. It was, the budget was not huge at all. COVID was happening, blah, blah, blah. And it was the first time I didn't really feel I was able to contribute what I wanted because there was no time. And the two wonderful directors, it was co-directed by two Canadian filmmakers who are just great. Cliff Prowse and Derek Lee are their names. And they're still in edit, and it's not out yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know it at the time. It was a difficult project in a million different ways. I had to learn gun training and combat training and choreography. And so it was a very strained and strange and yet a very exciting, adventure. But when it was over, that was something I felt, is that I had so many ideas that I think were really good that there was no time to implement. My favorite projects are when I can contribute. So I don't want to direct. I just don't think I like telling people what to do, if I can, but I like expressing myself more.
I understand. The last thing I want to bring up today is congrats on your Emmy win just a couple years ago. Is it nearby? Oh, I'd like to see it. Wow, that's right there. That's awesome. Yeah.
There she is.
And for what an amazing project.
It wasn't.
I'm a queer person in Toronto, and it's something I resonate with a lot. What was it like working on EastEnders?
I think it was only 2 days. I had such a good time, and I loved the character. I loved the writing, and Kit, who was our director and writer, was a very talented guy. And I guess, I didn't know really anything about him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he works with my agent. And so that was sort of how it all came together. And it was really fast. And I was shocked that I was nominated with Timothy Woodward, who is a wonderful director, writer, and who I've worked with on a couple of films now. He called me and he says, "Well, congratulations." I said, I thought, what happened? And he said, "You've been nominated." And I was really surprised. So I'm very grateful. And it was really fun. I look great. The makeup artist, again, I wish I had I got to make a list of names that I keep in front of me. Yeah. So, but I looked beautiful. I mean, to me, I even thought, wow, hey, okay. So I thought I looked great, and it was funny and touching. And I loved all the drag queens were fabulous. Yes. And they really were fabulous in every way. And I'm fascinated by all facets of humanity, may I add. I mean, I have no agenda with people. I really don't. As long as you have kindness of some kind in you, and that can be even veiled often with sadness or fear, or people don't behave properly, or it doesn't always work out like people are different than you think. Mm-hmm. But at the core of it, I mean, I'm very non-judgmental about anything you want to be or do is 100% fine with me.
That's beautiful, and what a nice note to end on. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, Lynn.
I jabbered. I hope I didn't jabber too much. I had tendencies.
No, this was a dream come true, and our audience is going to love it.
Okay, thank you, Josh. It's great to meet you, and
yes,
here's to the next one. Okay.
Yes, definitely. I'll talk soon.